Global Britain, yay! Well, Trade Minister Kemi Badenoch signed a relevant protocol in New Zealand, and this will soon make Britain the first and so far only European member of the Trans-Pacific Trading Community. Because Great Britain has sealed its accession to the Trans-Pacific Free Trade Agreement CPTPP, and Trade Minister Kemi Badenoch signed the accession protocol during a visit to Auckland in New Zealand. The UK will thus become the first new and the first European member of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership since its inception in 2018. Australia, Canada, Chile, Mexico, Japan, Brunei, Malaysia, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, and Vietnam belong to the free trade zone. According to the British government, after British accession, the alliance will encompass more than 500 million people and 15% of global economic output. Parliament in London still has to give its approval before Great Britain's accession, which is expected to take effect in the second half of next year, so in 2024. A number of goods manufactured in Great Britain will then no longer be subject to customs duties when exported to the CPTPP countries, such as cars, chocolate, and whiskey, with a long transition period. CPTPP is the largest trade agreement Britain joins after leaving the EU, and Brexit advocates have repeatedly said in recent years that London could easily conclude free trade agreements with faster growing countries outside the EU. From the point of view of critics, however, the resulting advantages can hardly offset the economic disadvantages caused by Brexit. The CPTPP agreement came about after the United States withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Free Trade Agreement, TPP, in 2017 under then-President Donald Trump. The 11 remaining members then renegotiated the agreement and finally signed a reduced version called CPTPP in Chile in March 2018. It's seen as an economic counterweight to China's growing influence in the region, although Beijing has since applied to join. Great Britain has been negotiating accession since February 2021. Official estimates say the deal would add just £1.8 billion a year to the economy after 10 years, which is less than 1% of the UK GDP. And due to the existing free trade agreements, British goods can already be exported to the countries mentioned tariff-free or with reduced tariff. Against this background, the British government expects GDP to increase by just 0.08% in a forecast of the effects of joining the CPTPP. So we're talking about 10 years again. And bilateral trade with the EU has plummeted since Brexit, and Britain was no longer a member of the EU's internal market and the customs union. And the reason for this is the, for Britain, new bureaucratic regulations and customs duties in some sectors. And the deal represents a continuation of the post-Brexit political tilt toward the Indo-Pacific, which will be home to about half of the world's middle-class consumers by 2035. The accession negotiations lasted 2 years. As early as September 2020, the UK and all 11 members of the CPTPP met to discuss the UK's possible entry into the Trans-Pacific Partnership. On February 1st in 2021, the UK submitted the formal application for membership. With the Conservatives trailing Labour in polls ahead of next year's expected general election, it's unclear whether the next government will be as focused on the Indo-Pacific as it is repairing Brexit-shattered ties with the EU. Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy said last month, the Tories were dishonest when they claimed CPTPP membership would offset trade losses in Europe, and he's quite right there. Officially, the CPTPP is touted as an alternative to the ailing World Trade Organization in an increasingly fragmented international trading system. After Britain joins, attention could turn to other potential new members, with applications from China and Taiwan likely to create tension. Conservationists and unions said the deal would allow trade in areas that harm the environment and pose risks to workers. According to reports, the government in London has bowed to Malaysia's demands and wants to waive an important duty for palm oil. Not only are environmentalists in Britain up in arms about this, The island kingdom is also distancing itself from the EU, which wants to ban the import of palm oil if it means that forest areas important for nature conservation and climate protection are cut down. There was also a dispute over beef imports from Canada. Canadians want the same free access to the British market that Australians and New Zealanders previously got. However, the British negotiators are breathing down their own farmers who have already been annoyed about the permissive deal with Australia and New Zealand. And on my last live stream, I talked about the EU-New Zealand deal as well. If the British initially thought they would be welcomed with open arms, they are now realizing that their old colonies in particular have nothing left to give away. The British have always been overly optimistic about the times and challenges. And that was said by Jeff Schott, a trade expert at the Institute for International Economics in Washington, and he recently stated that. Of the 71 trade deals Britain has signed since leaving the EU, 68 were more or less a copy of the arrangements it had before as a member. Only 3 new free trade agreements with Japan, Australia and New Zealand have been added so far, but the EU has made one with Japan and New Zealand as well, but better ones. So far, the economic benefit has been manageable. Trade with Japan has even declined in the first 12 months since the deal was signed. And according to former Environment Minister George Useless, the Australians ripped off the British negotiators in the deal with Down Under. Talks with India are faltering. Those with the US have not even started. And the accession negotiations to the CPTPP were quite an obstacle course, I can tell you. And elsewhere too, global Britain is making little progress. As I said, the talks with India are faltering, negotiations with the US, well, Joe Biden has refused to discuss trade facilitation with Britain until London settles this dispute with the EU over Northern Ireland. And it's not completely settled, even with the Windsor framework. And although this hurdle has now been kind of cleared with the Windsor framework, new obstacles are piling up with a gigantic support package from the US government for the green transformation, their IRA law. In the British capital, people have now noticed that they are falling by the wayside in the industrial subsidies race between the USA, the EU and China. At the time, Trade Minister Kemi Badenoch had criticized the planned government aid from the USA as protectionist and wanted to react to it together with like-minded countries. In addition to Japan, South Korea and Switzerland, the Conservative politician also expressly mentioned the EU. Yeah, but they will go their course in reaction to this, and there is a group, an EU-USA group, where they are discussing that. That's another point where they have a little bit of a different perspective than the British. But in the accession process to the CPTPP, there was one thing made clear, especially by Japan. There will be no exceptions for the British. And that's why I was talking about this hurdle courses. No exceptions for the British. They have to accept the full package, and they probably did now. And we will see what Parliament will say about it and what, in case of a Labour win, Labour will do with it. But there's something else that doesn't have to do with this, but I thought it was really funny. It was in the comments under one of my videos this week, and I think I should comment on that because that was really funny. I mean, some people are just overthinking very simple things. Someone had a big psychological analysis of my videos and my studio setup. First of all, I only sit here when I do videos or live streams. That is not how I live. I mean, I have more bookshelves like that, but this is my studio. Just saying. There's my background, there's the camera, there's the teleprompter, there are very big lights, and nothing else. And some of my viewers answered on that comment that's why I didn't, but I thought I should say something about it because it's so funny. And Ellie and others have been quite right. Some people are trying to be some, what we would call them kitchen psychologists here, to be very analyzing and everything. But the viewers who know more than one of my channels were quite right. Why are books in the background? Well, I have 2 book review channels, and it's quite obvious. And I am looking for some other stuff at the moment because of my military channel. Yeah, when I got the piece I want, then on one of the shelves there will be something for my military channel. And I'm looking for something from Star Trek because of STFC. If I finally got it, it will be on that shelf as well, because that has to do with my videos and my other channels as well. And the viewers that have been with me for years now know that the background changed when I had the Lego channel, which was quite nice to do, but it got quite expensive to do it, much more expensive than Outside Views STFC. And so that's why I stopped that one, because it was really expensive. There was Lego in the background, and that is the reason for that. And I found it even more interesting that everything has to be symmetrical, and I'm sitting right in the middle, or exactly in the middle. That says a lot about people not having a clue about YouTube, about software, about video editing. There's a very good reason why I'm sitting right in the middle here every time. And if you knew my other channels, you would know why. Because there are videos where I have to move myself into a certain position because there's a lot of writing on this side. And suddenly I have to be only on half a screen. And on my STFC videos, I'm just in a very small round screen there. And with all the work I'm doing, I mentioned it once, I'm doing about 44 videos a week for you. And something I really need there is saving time. That means for all different kinds of videos, I made myself templates in my editing software. And I don't have to change those if I always sit in the same position right here in the middle, because then nothing else that's next to the shelf or whatever is disturbing, and I don't have to switch anything around. If I'm always sitting here, the template is working. I'm always there, even in split screens and whatever, where I need to be, whatever template I open. But it's really funny what people that obviously are not working with these programs, etc., are analyzing into it. But it was real fun to read it. Well, I'm really sorry to have blown all your firm thoughts there, but it's unfortunately just that simple. And it's also fun. People who know me, especially here in my political life, for example, would call me a lot, but not insecure. That was the funniest part about it. But nevertheless, that was just a little going astray. I'm going astray a lot in my live stream, so I thought I'd say it in the end of one video instead of doing it on my live stream. But we can talk about this on Sunday as well, on the next live stream, of course. But that's a fun thing. And so I just want to say, guys, listen to the content and don't interpret too much into it. I say what I'm thinking, and what you see is just a studio setup. And yeah, someone wrote it, you're right. I'm not going to show you my home and what the rest of my home looks for. I'm not one of those influencers who are showing their making house tours and whatever with you. No, I'm not going to do that. But nevertheless, I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.